don't always be so sure because, that one thing that you may be wrong about could be the thing that unlocks the possibility of your future. And there's a million things, whether it's the job, maybe you're a professional athlete.
This is a human challenge we all go through. Life is transitory, and some of those transitions require transformation. I need to become a different person. We have a tendency as humans to make things simple, to identify ourselves by our roles. What we do is who we are. Depending on the level of challenge, existing is what you can do. Just, you're there. But I think the first step has to be, who do I think I am? And who do I want to be? And not the roles. Like, I want to be a CEO, and I want to be, those are just things you do.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to this episode of the Game Changer Podcast. My name is Michelle Dutro. I'm your host, and I'm thrilled to be joined by JC Glick today. Let me give you a little bit of his background. JC served 20 years in the U.S. Army, including more than 7 years in the famed Ranger Regiment, 2 Best Ranger competitions, and 11 combat operational deployments around the world. JC, I didn't mention, did you know I was in the Air Force? A lot of people think it's very similar, the Air Force and the Army Rangers.
You know,
well,
I get that. I get that a lot. I get that a lot.
Do they? Do people say that? No one says that.
We probably stayed at the same hotel when we were deployed.
I said that to a couple different Navy SEALs. You know, people think that's super similar to the Air Force, and they both looked at me like, I said, yeah, no one thinks I'm just joking about that. I was in the Air Force, and we did stay in hotels and drink, champagne and eat shrimp cocktail in basic training. You know what? Someone's got to, though. Someone's got to.
You've got to. Absolutely.
Someone's got to.
You know, you've also got the shortest basic training of any of the basic training.
Because we go in that much ahead. We're just
You're
in
already
shape.
squared away.
You know what? It's a requirement. If you can't walk a block, don't even bother showing up.
Exactly.
You know what I'm saying?
It's much higher, much more elite.
Well,
I get it.
You know. Look at when times are tough and you're looking up praying. Are you looking up and praying to God? Are you looking up going, where's the Air Force when I need them? Well, I'm just trying to say.
Joint fight. It's a joint
all
fight.
Right. Here we go. Everybody get ready for this podcast. Back to it. Here we go. Since transitioning out of uniform, he's taken that elite leadership and wonderful sense of humor, experience and applied it to helping high performers, veterans, and civilians alike. Reconstruct identity, rediscover purpose, and design their next mission. This is what I really, really want to dive into today. Today, he is the Chief Executive Officer of the Commit Foundation. I'm going to have links to that in show notes so that you can check it out. He guides organizations dedicated to personalized transition journeys, helping veterans and their families go beyond just a job and craft lives of meaning, impact, and community. He's also an accomplished author. We're going to talk about this. Highly recommend this book for leadership in any area, even your own personal leadership in your life. Highly recommend this book. The book is A Light in the Darkness, Leadership Development for the Unknown, which is the world we live in currently. Speaks directly to what happens when our familiar identities crumble and new opportunities call. Beyond the service and leadership, what stands out in his mission is to help each of us, no matter our background, to pause, reflect, and ask, who am I now? What do I want to become? And what legacy will I live? Not leave, but live. So with that, JC, did I leave anything out before we dive in that folks need to know about you?
No, that was lovely. And what I love hearing about my bio is I always sound so impressive, and I'm really not. So thank you.
Oh, that is absolutely
I appreciate that.
Not true. That right there is humility. That's a good man who has some humility, especially when they have the track record like you do. And I'm going to, listen, it goes on for days. It goes on for days. We are all honored to have you here. And the thing that I am excited and very timely for, I don't know if you heard yesterday, by the time this comes out, this won't be yesterday's news, but did you hear yesterday that Amazon had first announced they were laying off 30,000 people, and I guess it wound up being about 14,000?
Yep.
So here's the thing, veteran or not, it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
There are things of the unknown where you think you work for a large corporation, you're going to be there forever. And when we have a plan for our life and that plan changes on us, We didn't, that not by our doing. And there's a million things, whether it's the job, maybe you were a professional athlete and there was your identity. You were in the military and there was your identity. Maybe you were in a marriage your whole life and you were the wife or the husband and there is your identity. And suddenly, one day, unbeknownst to you, that identity whoosh, ripped away. And now you're left thinking, who am I? And I don't know what my self-worth is or if I even have any. And I know that having the ability to pick up the pieces and move on requires some semblance of worthiness, that I have something left to give, that I have something of value that somebody still may be interested in.
Yeah.
I want to start there because this is your field of expertise. This is what you know, to my knowledge, so far in my life, and I've been doing this for more than 20 years, better than most anyone, helping pick up the pieces when someone feels lost and saying, you're not done, right?
Yeah.
You've got more to give and your gift is still inside you. And maybe it changes, maybe we redefine it. But I want us to start with the person right now who's lost.
Yeah, I think, you talked about a whole bunch of roles that people are in. And the two pieces that come to mind immediately are, this isn't a military problem or veteran problem or an athlete problem or divorce. Like this is a human challenge. We all go through. Life is transitory, right? We all talk about transition. And for some reason, the military talks about it the most. And we're like, oh, you're going through transition. Like it's from here to here. No, life is transitory. Your kids go to college, your kids get married, you get divorced, right? Life is transitory. And some of those transitions require transformation. I need to become a different person now, right? And unfortunately, the other piece that I think about, and I personally went through this, is we have a tendency as humans to make things simple, to identify ourselves by our roles. What we do is who we are, right? And I will tell you that, when I went from being constantly deployed in a special missions unit and special operations, and then going to the training and doctrine command, I lost my identity. That was the first time I lost my identity. I was this ranger, I was this operator, I was doing this thing, and now you have me in training and doctrine command. You've taken away my identity. You've taken away my purpose. You've tried to give me a new purpose. I'm not saying it was bad. It was just a different purpose. And you took away all my people. And you did that overnight. And that trauma, and I call it a little T trauma, but that trauma 18 months later was my first of 4 suicide attempts, because I did not know how to reconstruct my identity. And years later, I thought I got it right. And, I've been out for about 10 years now. And like 5 years ago, I started identifying as Jen's husband, and I'm Casey and Corbett and Steve's dad. And I'm, Grace and Brennan and Isabel's stepdad. And it was upon further reflection and some assumptions that were challenged by my teammates. They said, no, those are roles. Who are you? Who are you? And so I started looking at, this idea of, well, I have a really hard time saying I'm this, but I can tell you what I aspire to be. I aspire to be innovative. I aspire to be humble. I aspire to be caring. I aspire to be driven. Like I have a whole bunch of things that I believe that, there's this difference. And I don't know if you've ever read any of Eric Fromm, but he talks about on being. And so I think there's this existing, and I think most of us are there. And I think most of us are there because life is a challenge, and sometimes it's more challenging for other people than it is for others. I mean, there's certain advantages that other people have. So depending on the level of challenge, existing is what you can do. It's just, you're there. And then there's being, which is kind of, okay, I understand what my role is in the ecosystem, right? Kind of a Capra-esque, kind of like, okay, I know what I'm supposed to do here. and I know what I'm bringing to the ecosystem. I know what makes me special, my interaction. And then there's this idea that I think takes it one step further, which is becoming. And I think that's what we should be striving towards. This kind of this self-transformational, transcendence of, okay, I aspire to be these things. They're aspirational, so I'm probably going to miss it and I'm going to screw it up, but I'm going to keep trying. But I think the first step has to be, who do I think I am? And who do I want to be? And not the roles. Like, I want to be a CEO and I want to be, those are just things you do. Who do you want to be as a human?
And the value in that is regardless of title, because who you want to be doesn't change if you just lost your job yesterday.
Exactly.
Or somebody walked out on you and left a note that says, "You'll notice the closet's now empty, I'm gone." Who you are doesn't change. And that sameness, and Mark Divine certainly is a big proponent of who are you? What is your essence? What is that unchangingness of you that no one or nothing can take away? No one. So in those dark times, and you mentioned that you've had a few, what in it within you in those times did you decide, uh, either this life isn't worth it or I'm not? What to you felt so bad that there was no hope for tomorrow?
Yeah. This is interesting. I recently talked to somebody about this, and I think, I think that's kind of where people think suicidal ideations and suicide attempts kind of come from. From my limited subjective view, for me, it wasn't a lack of hope. I was, and pardon my language, I was an asshole. I was horrible. I was angry all the time. I was making life for the people around me absolutely miserable, right? I was not a good husband. I was not a good partner. I wasn't a bad father, like, because I can think of bad fathers, but I wasn't a good dad. I wasn't a good friend. I was angry all the time. I was engaging in risky behavior. I didn't like who I was, but I could live with not liking who I am. I can't live with screwing up the lives of all these people that I actually do care about. And so if I'm the problem, I got to solve the problem. I'm the problem. Well, if I'm the common denominator in all these issues. So let's remove that problem. So for me, it wasn't a poor me or I have no hope, or I went, man, I am a problem. And a solution was that. And this is why I'm very, I think we're way too glib with people with suicide ideations. We say these things like, oh, it's a permanent solution for a temporary problem. And we use these like, it's a real solution. Like it's not an optimal solution, but let's not take away their sense making at the moment to say it's completely like, can we not empathize and go, "Ah, I get it. Like that makes sense to me. But what are the other things that we could do? Right. And
Right.
how do we get that person to think strategically? We can't, because I'm going to tell you, and again, I mentioned this to a friend the other day. I remember a few years ago, Dak Prescott, and God bless him. I mean, good dude. He on his taped wrist, he wrote, ask for help. I got to be honest with you. I wasn't in the frame of mind to ask anybody for help. I mean, first of all, we condition our children, forget if you're military, we condition our children to be self-sufficient, right?
Right.
We compound that in the military saying like, hey, solve the problem, right? We do that in society. Like, how many times have we heard like, don't bring me a problem, bring me a solution, right? Be self-sufficient, figure it out. Well, except for this one thing, right? So that paradox of, wait, I should do everything on my own except for this thing. And oh, by the way, my judgment's completely screwed up. I have really bad judgment here. Why are we asking these people? Why are we putting the onus on people who are in crisis to recognize they're in crisis and ask for help, which goes against pretty much our culture, as opposed to our community saying, oh, they can't think strategically. They have an answer. It's a less than optimal answer. Let's see if there's other answers that I can help them get to. Hey, are you thinking about hurting yourself? We don't do that because we
Right.
feel uncomfortable.
Right. This is in the firefighter community. I used to be a firefighter back in the day.
Oh, wow.
They have these peer group things where there's, on the bathroom wall, if you need someone to talk to, if you're, really going through it, call 1-800 whatever. You're calling another, it's anonymous, but you're calling another firefighter. And it's the same thing. I've never understood it because that person is not the person who's going to call 1-800, call a fellow firefighter and tell them, first of all, that's, to your point, not going to happen. Second of all, if I can't solve my problems, why would I think somebody that I work with who's in the same boat as me, doing the same job as me, has got some solution that I haven't come up with yet? So it's just, and look, I get, they're trying to do something, right? We've got a problem. We've got suicide rates in the fire department, police department, higher than death rates on the job. It didn't used to be that way. And that used to be just for veterans and active duty. And now we've teenagers. I mean, that those numbers are through the roofs. I mean, there's no segment of population anymore that isn't impacted by not just the ideation, but the thing that breaks my heart is these teenagers that are bullied online. I didn't have to go through that. There was no online. There weren't cell phones back in my day, thank goodness. But you look at the amount of cyberbullying and stuff that goes on with these kids that feel that there is no way out.
Yeah.
I don't have the ability to change my surroundings. I can't make my family move. I can't take myself out of this school. And you want to talk about feeling like there's no way out.
Yeah.
Talk to a teenager in a high school where they're not in charge of the options. So now we're really looking at, this is the only option I have. And so from your perspective, somebody who is either listening or somebody who, there's someone that comes to mind that's listening saying, I'm Jack or Sally or whatever it is, and I'm not sure what to do or I'm not sure what to say. Going back to those times, what mattered to you? Let's just be specific with you, not having all the answers for everybody, but what you do know is you.
No. I can tell you that, my wife, Jen, who was able to empathize with me and yet still hold me accountable and provide care and comfort, but also structure and guidance, right? I think we look at support as, I agree with you, or, and I know, in a lot of, psychology and a lot of social work, they always say like, hey, the patient, they know their best treatment, or no, they don't. They need guidance. I'm sorry. I just disagree with that. I'm not a psychologist. I'm not a social worker, but I know that I didn't know what was good for me. And I think that having that support, that's like, okay, totally understand. And this is unacceptable, or, hey, there's another answer. Let's think about this. Right. And it was very different for me. It didn't feel like coddling. It didn't feel like, and it didn't feel like tough love. It felt like a conversation. And I think that's really important. And I think that, as I look back on those things, and where Commit is not a suicide prevention organization, we are absolutely helping, those in the military, those that have served in the intelligence community, our allied forces, and their spouses transform from whatever identity there was and to create the next chapter. But I do know that when we focus on identity, purpose, and community, we're hitting 3 of the 5 factors that lead into suicide.
That's
Right.
right.
And so, and I don't want to touch the other 2, which are finance and relationships. We are completely focused on things that I think transformation, and when I say transformation, I'm literally talking about the academic idea of transformational learning. I'm in a disorienting dilemma. I challenge assumptions. I experiment. I know what I want to carry forward. I know what I want to leave behind. I reflect on learnings and I become something new.
In this space, if you as the version of you now
Mm.
were talking to that very first version of you when you had said, "This is my way out. I'm a miserable person. I'm making everybody around me miserable."
Yeah.
If you now could talk to you then, what would that conversation have looked
What
like?
what a beautiful question that is. Thank you. That is a beautiful, beautiful question. I think I would ask myself, who am I? And I would be really unhappy with who I was. Like I can tell you that it wasn't until a few years ago even. And again, been out 10 years. So, and I'm going to say 2 or 3 years ago, I didn't like who I was. I didn't like, there were aspects of me that I didn't like. And I think that that changed when I started to think about who do I want to be and trying to and aspiring and working towards those things. And a little grace when I screwed it up. But I think I'd ask, like, look, who are you? Okay, now who do you want to be? All right, what are the things that we have to do to get there? And I think that's the conversation that I would have had. I've never been asked that question. It's a beautiful question. I'm going to actually
Mm.
reflect on it and think about it some more. Uh, it's a really, it's just very thoughtful and insightful. And I want to think about that.
Let me throw another one at you.
Yeah.
So I also run a PTSD retreat center, which is why I'm asking. So anytime I've
Yeah.
get the opportunity to talk to somebody, right,
Sure.
made it through,
Yeah.
is that reflection time because it's all valuable to me, and I know it's all valuable to anybody listening. What what do you think was missing in your life that you have in your life now? Maybe that's in the way of coaches or mentors,
Yeah.
the positive input. But what was missing in your life then that you have in your life now that is incredibly beneficial to keep you grounded, to keep you on the right track, to keep your head above water?
So I would say that it's a host of things, but I think it's not necessarily what's in my life. It's how I receive all those things. Cause I think I've had like I had the opportunity for the support or for the, right? I couldn't receive it for a host of reasons, right? I mean, I think some of it has to do with maturity, right? Some of it has to do with previous trauma, whether that was big T or little t. The things that, my psych and I had talked about, the things that made me really good at what I did in the military were things that were not awesome in my childhood. And it actually didn't help. It just kind of continued that path on. Um, so I think it's an ability to be vulnerable, um, to to recognize that you know you don't control anything, right? To recognize that I think the biggest thing, and this, and again, I wish I could say like this happens over so much time, but I think where I'm at now, I really believe that there's no objective reality. I believe the only objective reality that exists is the one that we live. And that reality is subjective to everyone else and should be. And and when we and I don't feel isolated by that. I actually feel freed by that because the way I'm looking at it is probably not right, or it's definitely not the way somebody else sees it. So it's that openness that allows me to consider other options, other opportunities, other courses of action, and it just makes me more open. And look, I don't know. I would hope that I could have been that when I was, heck, I wasn't that in my 40s. But now at 54, um, like I'm really comfortable. Have you ever heard of Ellen Langer?
Mm-mm.
Okay, Ellen Langer is this brilliant, brilliant professor. I think she went to Yale and she teaches now at Harvard. But I heard her talking to Peter Singer. And Peter Singer, like he's a little bit of a rough guy. I mean, he's very bright, but I don't know that he and I would drink beers together. But Ellen Langer, I would like, I could just listen to her all day long. But she said something, and she said, "Look, you know, you're very sure of things, and I don't believe that there's any way of knowing anything because everything is always changing." I love that, how profoundly simple that is, right? Everything
Yeah.
I know, I don't know. And that makes me open to a whole bunch of other things. And so I am much less sure of myself, or I try to be. I don't know, my wife might disagree at times, because I do believe there's a way to make the bed. But I'm much less sure of things, and I'm much more comfortable, being the dumbest guy in the room. Like, I actually embrace that.
Yeah, same.
Um,
I strive for it as well, and I think it's also probably why you and I both, I'm guessing here, would oppose people that always have a need to be right, because how can you always how can you always be how can you always be right?
it's gotta be exhausting.
Right.
Gotta be exhausting. Man, I am wrong more often than not. And when I share an opinion, and it's interesting because people will hear, I write a lot and I put out thoughts, and they're just thoughts. And they're like, "Well, I don't think that's right." Uh, it might not be
Okay.
100%, right?
Yeah.
I mean,
Okay.
I'm at Columbia right now getting my doctorate, and I love that, like, in everything I read, in every course I take, in every lecture I listen to, I learned something that I knew nothing about that changes how I look at the world. And it happens like, it's not like, "Oh, this happened once." It happens in every single course, in every single class, and it's one of it's the best academic experience I've ever had because I was a horrible student as a, like, horrible high school student. I went to college and I did well only because I wanted to be an officer in the military. Like, I went to grad school because I was a good officer in the military, and once you get in, it's really hard for them to, like, kick you out. Um, this is the first time that I've actually, like, "Oh my gosh, this is education. Like, this is making me better."
Right. A totally different agenda
Yeah,
of what you wanted to get out of it.
absolutely.
Achieving a goal versus how is this your whole thing in life? How is this
Transforming.
transforming me? Um, oh man. Okay, so I got to stay focused because we could be hours on all of. I have pages of questions to ask, and I'm
Well,
just.
we can do more. I'm
Oh
enjoying
my
it.
goodness
It's
sakes,
great.
we are going to have to because there's so many different avenues here. So let me get your thoughts on this then. So on the thought of transformation, and I'm trying to keep listeners in mind who are saying, okay, so I'm with you guys. I'm not loving my life right now.
Mm,
I'm not loving where I'm at. Maybe I'm not loving the relationships I have. I think, quite frankly, most people are not solely based on, you're no longer my friend or a family member because we don't agree on fill in the blank.
yeah,
And it used to be a couple of things, and now the laundry list is so long that we have more reasons to alienate people than we do to bring them in. So we're not going to go down that rabbit hole, but what I'm going to say is I'm not happy with my life. My community is who knows what anymore. Finances, yep, sure enough, that's a mess and a problem and probably heading downhill. And so all of these things, and you two are sitting here talking about, but who am I? And let me transform. And
yeah,
I don't know. And I don't know how to be positive about a future when I'm just sitting here in a mess.
yeah.
And so, guys, I'm listening to you two banter along, and I'd like to leave with something tangible that I can put into action today and move my life one iota in the right direction. What can I do?
Yeah, I think we have to I think the main piece is that you have to find some time to reflect, not ruminate, and it's different, right? If you ruminate, you're going to sit there and think about how bad your life is. It's this, it's this, it's this, it's this, as opposed to reflection, which really gets to the deeper question is, why do I think it's bad? What am I, and I'm not saying like do this comparative analysis, like, well, I don't have cancer or I don't like, no, don't do that. Cause that's garbage. Like
Right.
your problems are real, like 100%. They're just yours. So, but reflect on, okay, why? So I'm struggling on finances. Okay, why? Well, am I overspending? I don't think I am. Well, let's look. Let me look at that, right? Okay, no, I'm not. Okay, well, do I feel like I'm valued at work? Like, do I think that I need to act like, what are the root causes of, these things? And I want, and if you can't do it yourself, you've got to find somebody who will help you challenge assumptions. Like, well, I don't think I spend too much, but maybe I'll go talk to Sally and be like, or look, if you're not comfortable talking to anybody, I'm going to tell you, I just published an article today about how you can use AI for reflection, right? Put your budget into AI and say, do I spend too much? AI will tell you like, hey, here's where you're
Where are
spending
the
too much,
opportunities?
right?
Because, yeah, right.
So I think that you've got to challenge. I think we go through life with a whole bunch of assumptions that it is this way. And I think that if we actually, I'll give you one that's kind of, it's an interesting one. It goes to kind of what you were alluding to earlier. And I don't want to go down the rabbit hole, but I do want to give an example. I worked with an organization and we were talking about trust, and it was a black man who was talking to me. He goes, nobody trusts me. I said, what do you mean nobody trusts you? He goes, I'm a black man. Nobody trusts me. I'm like, nobody trusts you. He goes, no. I said, okay. Hey, you were late to come into this seminar, right? He goes, yeah. And what'd you tell me? He said, oh, well, I had something come up at work and I had to, right? I trusted you. I trusted that that's why you were there. So you're going around with this assumption, and I'm not saying it's a self-fulfilling prophecy, but you believe that it's true, but it's not, because I trust you. I can't speak for everybody, but you now can't say no one, because I do. And then we went down like some other roads with that. But I think we have to challenge the assumptions that are putting us in this spot, because I think we spiral, right? And we
Right.
ruminate, but I think reflecting, it's different. It's different. And I think we can constantly look at the challenges, or we can say, okay, what are the opportunities? Where can I change again this much?
Yeah.
And when it's not successful, it's okay. It's okay. Like, we are all figuring this out. But
Yeah.
one of the important things, and I think where a lot of unhappiness comes from today, is comparative analysis. I think we look at social media. I think we're being told how much we disagree, as opposed to actually talking to people and seeing if we disagree. I think we're believing a lot of what we're told, as opposed to what might be. And I think that can change how we look too. I will tell you, I listened to, it was another Peter Singer podcast, but this woman said that she took social media off her phone and just put it on like her iPad or her phone at work. And I did the same thing. And I will tell you, like, I don't look at X, because X is, and it's great. I appreciate what it does. And holy cow, if you want to think the world is on fire, read X. Right. And everybody's arguing. It's not a public square anymore. It's just like public WWE. As we look at Instagram or TikTok, I think what we see is the best version of whatever anybody wants to show you that's not real.
Mm. Yep.
And so I think that helps us with this unhappiness, is we think we're bad because we're comparing life to someone else. There's a great idea that I talk about, which is measuring backwards. And it's not my idea. I talk about it. Tony Blauer, a guy named Tony Blauer, came up with this idea. But let's say you tried, you were a bench presser guy. You loved to bench press. and you're like, I want to bench press 300, and you failed. Ah, I suck. I couldn't do 300. But wait a second. Remember when you couldn't do 225? Oh, no, now I can do that a bunch of times. Oh, okay. Hey, remember when 135 was hard? Oh, yeah. Okay, so measure backwards. Like, see how far you've come. I mean, if you're
Yeah.
going to compare against where you've been, not where somebody else is. And it's
Right.
hard. Here's the other thing is I get up and I get to talk on podcasts and I get to write stuff and I make it sound like, oh, it's so easy. It's not. It's not. In fact, my wife, a year ago, 2 years ago, she called me out and she's like, look, you just wrote this article on finding purpose in every single moment. I said, yeah. She's like, yeah, you don't do that. I'm like, no. She's like, but people are going to read that and think that you got to figure it out. So I literally wrote an article the next day saying, oh, these are all just ideas that I try, but I don't get it right all the time. Like I screw, like sometimes I get ticked off when I have to pick up dog poop. I can't see the purpose in that. I don't necessarily, that doesn't mean the idea is wrong. It just means I don't always follow my own advice.
Right. And I think that goes back to this comparison world of Instagram or Facebook or whatever it is. If everything is the highlight reel, even for people that we follow that are handing out advice with the best intention, is the assumption is, well, look at, they're doing it all the time and I can't do it all the time. Well, no one or nothing is all the time. Just like the guy who said, no one ever trusts me. There's no such thing as never and always and nobody. And the land of absolutes also does us in. Right? I'll never be. Well, okay, hang on a second here is where a little bit of grace comes in. And, I also love what you said about give something a try. I think when we look at, if I try to do something and fail, I'm going to feel even worse about myself versus changing the language to an experiment. Just try an experiment. Maybe it works, maybe it doesn't. Who knows? But now we've gained a little more knowledge. Now
100%.
we know. Now we know one other thing that we've just tried. Maybe it worked, but maybe there's a version of something that we can try on. So in this realm of transformation, what are some of the, as somebody who has the opportunity to be in the driver's seat and watch people transform to being lost, let's give some folks some hope of, because when people hear a story or two of, here's somebody who was here and now they're there. If someone else can do it, maybe I can do it. So what are some things that you've seen where somebody was before you saying, I got nothing, man. I got nothing. I'm going nowhere. I don't even have an idea for you. And you look at them now. What did they do? What were some ideas or concepts that they clung on to that somebody's listening going, okay, that worked for them. I can give that thing a shot. What
Yeah.
was that?
So I would argue that happens with almost all of our fellows. They come in some way, shape, or form and go, I got no idea. I don't know what I want to do. I got no idea. And what they all agreed to is they did the work, because this doesn't, you can't read it in a book. I can't sit here and tell you do this and this and this, and it's going to happen. You have to do the work, and you really have to look at yourself, and you have to reflect, and you have to challenge assumptions, and you have to be comfortable being wrong. Like, oh, wait, I thought it was like this the whole time,
My whole life?
and now it's not. I don't know that that's right. And that can feel like the world is but if you know that you have a support system, whatever that support system is, then it makes it a little bit safer. And I will tell you now, I almost look for those opportunities. And it's funny. I was, my wife and I were having a fight the other night, and not like a knockdown, screaming fight, but we were certainly a little ticked at each other. And she said something, and I went, oh, nope, you're right. I was wrong. I shouldn't have said that 100%. And she was like, wait, like, so you're just doing a 180. I'm like, no, you just said this and it completely makes sense. And I hadn't even thought about that. This is my fault. I'm sorry. That's the most freeing thing in the world. Like, in fact, she was a little disoriented, like, wait, like, what's going on? And I'm like, no, like, I get it. Like, that's a, yes, totally legit. I wasn't thinking about that. And I was in my own stuff. And I think the freedom that comes from being able to have that 180-degree change, like, oh, whoa. And I'll give you an example. And again, might go down the political road, but meh. I will tell you that a year ago, 2 years ago, I would have told you that Juneteenth was a black holiday. And I do not understand why we're celebrating it. And I don't get it. Like, it doesn't make any sense to me. Like, what are we doing here? And I had a friend who said, do you know the history of it? And I said, no. He goes, you should look into it. So I did. And I went, oh my God, why is this not like, this is not a black holiday. This is an American holiday. And so this past year, I wrote an article with a good friend of mine, Adrian Hulls, who we worked together. And I said, this isn't a black holiday. This is an American holiday. And this is something that we should celebrate, that we as a country said, yeah, this isn't right. Like, all this stuff that we did before, we got to change it. Now, did it change it overnight? No. But the realization that, oh, by the way, the Army marched in and said, knock this off. That's amazing. Right? So what opens up to you when you stop being so sure of the world around you is, like, how many arguments could I have gotten in about Juneteenth? And now I'm like, oh, this is awesome. And I don't get in arguments because it's like, it's a bull holiday. I'm like, you should probably look at the history. And then I don't like, but I know how I feel about it. Like, it's great.
Right. And I think that concept alone could save so many people and so many relationships. When you said about, which I think is the backbone to everything, ask a different set of questions, you're going to get a different set of answers. It'll change your whole life. It'll change your perspective. You're just asking the same questions all the time, which is why you always come up with the same answers, thinking that everything is bad. You're asking bad questions to begin with. But when you ask someone, or ask yourself, what would it take for you to change your mind? And when immediately the person or yourself says, oh, nothing, I never will. Well, we got a problem.
Yeah.
We got a problem. So there's no amount of new information, new facts, new data, if I could list out, nope, nothing. There's nothing you could say. Well, that kind of is the crux then of everything we're talking about. How do we transform if we are so set to say nothing in the world new can come in that will change a thing? Well, that is what we needed to know.
Yeah.
That's where we start.
Yeah, absolutely. And I
We got to let new in.
We have to, and we have to be open. And look, again, I've said before, and I truly believe this, I think vulnerability is a human superpower. I think the ability to be vulnerable, and I don't mean you have to like share like your deepest, darkest secrets with everybody, but vulnerability in that you can be wrong, you can be weak, you can be soft, you can be a casualty, not a victim, but a casualty. And I do think there's a difference, and I think there are real victims, but I think that if we have a victim mentality, sometimes that hurts our ability to grow. And also, I hate the word privilege, but I do think we have to understand advantage. I think we have to understand, advantages and how that impacts how we see the world. Because, the center on the basketball team who's 7 foot, he doesn't have privilege, but he has an advantage over the 6'5" center. And you got to recognize that. So there are times where, in certain circumstances, I think advantage, it's not static. It flows. Some place I might have an advantage, and in other places I don't have an advantage. Right. I can tell you that in small spaces, I don't have an advantage. Right. But if I have to lift everything, I have an advantage over my wife.
Right.
It's not a privilege. It's an advantage. But I think that we do have to be able to recognize those. And I think that when people I heard a term today, and I heard radically dependent on each other. And I like the idea. I hated the words, and I think words are important, but I think we have to be radically symbiotic in that where I have advantage, I should be trying to figure out how to use that advantage to help you. So
Mm,
maybe that person who's listening is in a tough spot, and some of these things you gotta have holding space, right? Or maybe you don't have any holding space at all. Well, somebody in their life needs to create that holding space for 'em,
that's right.
right?
That's right.
So, I
Well
mean, we
said.
lift while we climb, and I think that, that's what it's all about, right? It's I love this idea of radically symbiotic. Hey, I'm gonna help you, you're gonna help me. This is a team sport. Life is a team sport,
Yeah. Yeah.
and we're in it together.
Yeah, that's it. And you know that study that was done a long time ago and they made it into documentaries and magazines and articles, the blue zones, the 5
Mhm.
around the world, and they only had well, they had 2 things in common. It was obviously it wasn't their environment because they're vastly different regions of the world, and it wasn't their diet, though that also was, quite different. But the 2 things they had in common was community and sense of purpose.
Yeah.
And all 5 had that, and when you look at who are the people that not just live the longest, because it's not about being connected to wires and oxygen tanks, and, no one wants that life, but to live the longest and the happiest.
Yeah.
What are the backbones? And we all have that opportunity every day to be that person that is helping pull someone up, because if we think for 1 second that at some point we're not gonna need that, you're kidding yourself.
Yep.
And to be able to ask for that help, to be able to reach out, there's back to that vulnerability of saying, "Hey, I could use a hand here. You know, today's not the best day for me." Knowing that you are always keeping your eye out for that person, whether they ask for it or not, to be there, to sit with them.
Well, and how about the other side, which is the vulnerability to ask somebody if they need help, knowing that
Right,
they may get offended, they may get mad at you, but being vulnerable enough to go, "I'm not sure, but I wanna ask,"
right. Yep.
right? And the
And if
worst
you
thing
get
they do
yelled
is
at,
they
that's
say,
okay.
"I don't need your help." "Oh, okay, cool, but
Yeah,
I wanna ask."
that's right. Yep, I'm gonna ask. And and also being okay with, "Cool, can we just hang out? I just wanna sit with you. Don't have to do a
Yeah,
thing." And
yeah,
being okay just to sit there.
yep,
And creating that space that if and when someone needs to talk, that there's someone there, and we
yeah.
can all be that. With the day we get too busy to be that, I don't know. That's a problem. So I wanna end this. Boy, we're gonna have to reconvene because there's,
Would love
I
that.
mean, holy, I love talking with you. When you say this is not about the legacy that you leave, but the legacy that you're living,
Yeah,
talk to me right now about yours. So this today version here of JC,
yeah.
what is the legacy that you are living today, working toward? What is it that someone says, "Man, that's it. That's the message I needed to hear today."
You know what? I wanna be a good teammate to everyone around me. And that's giving them whatever they need at the moment that they need it, right? I wanna know what my place in the ecosystem is, and it doesn't have to be a big place. It can be a little thing. I look at, white blood cells, and Capra talks about this in his book, Web of Life. The white blood cell is special because it has cognition. It knows what it's supposed to do. It knows what it's not supposed to do. And as long as it does what it's supposed to do, it's special. But if it doesn't do anything, not only is it not special, it's just a cell. It's another cell, and it's actually detrimental to the system, right? And I think in a world where we all want to be special, the truth of the matter is we're just different. 99.9% of our DNA is the same, and like 99.8% is the same as like a banana. So I mean, we're just different. So to be special, to be unique, requires an interaction with the world. And I just want to interact in the appropriate way for people when they need it. And that's what I
Mm,
try to live. And sometimes I get it. Sometimes, more often than not, I get it wrong, but I try to learn from it and get it right the next time. But that's the legacy that I want to live is that, today. not when I'm dead. But today, people think I'm a good teammate and that they can count on me.
And I do hope that one thing that people take away from this, and it's what you it's your today motto, is it's not about the end game. That wasn't result oriented. That was today, and this idea of becoming. And who am I today? Get it wrong, get it right. I'm working toward that thing. And I think we judge ourselves harshly when we have decided when we were, I don't know, 30, what we should be or have or whatever by the time we were 30, 40, 50, 60. And then that birthday shows up and we go, I didn't make it. I failed. And whenever it's that finality, I'll be amazing when I do X. We've lost sight of who am I today?
Yeah, the if-then world. I'll tell you something I always go back to, and my father actually told me something that my grandmother used to say. You know how to make God laugh? Tell him your plans. And
Yeah,
and so look, I believe that we should have goals and
right,
objectives and desires, and like you should be thinking ahead and planning
right.
ahead.
Head in a direction.
Right? I mean, even the Buddha didn't say like, "Hey, just live and let live and life come." Right? He was
Correct.
very
Yep,
clear, like there should be some objectives.
yep,
But I also think that there's got to be this ability to adapt to different
right.
outcomes and to
That's right.
welcome those and to see the opportunity in those. And when something, I think about the things that didn't work out in my life, well, they led to other things that like, oh my gosh, I'm so glad this happened.
That's
And
right.
so, I think it's really important not to have regrets. I think regrets I don't know that they're very helpful.
No.
I really struggle with the concept.
And I agree on it's having goals with blinders. You've missed it. What if you were just supposed to head in a direction
Yeah.
to meet that person?
Yep.
You were supposed to stay open. I need to head you down this direction so that you would be exposed to these things, not necessarily for that end game.
Right.
I just wanted you to walk on that path and stay open along the way. So, fantastic. If somebody's wanting to, well, they're going to have links. They're going to have links to the book because this whole thing is, everything is uncertain, and we've got to be the best version of ourselves every day. Period. End of story. Well, let me back that up. It would be good if we wanted that. It would be a good starting point to just want to be the best that we can
You
be.
need to be the best version. So in my second book, Meditations of an Army Ranger, I talk about how often you need to be great. I believe you got to be great about 2% of the time. 98% of the time, you can be figuring it out.
That's right.
But
Do your
great
best.
that 2% of the time, and that takes to be great 2% of the time requires failure and learning and experimentation, and because greatness isn't static, right?
That's
I
right.
give the example, the 1972 Dolphins, if you put them in a time capsule and put them out today, I mean, I'm thinking Alabama beats them. I'm thinking USC beats them. Greatness requires iteration and evolution. And
Right.
so, when you ask, and I encourage people to like ask their kids, how often do you need to be great? They think they got to be great at practice, on
All the
games, in
time.
the classroom. Like,
Straight A's.
dude, like you gotta be great 2% of the time.
That's it.
Everything else is figuring out how to get to that 2%.
Yeah.
And I think when you do that, then you start to really develop. Right?
Yeah.
So yeah, look, I am rarely the best version of myself. I hope that I'm the best version of myself that 2% of the time when somebody really needs me to be the best version of myself.
Yeah.
Otherwise, yeah, most of the time I'm good enough. And sometimes I'm better than that.
If somebody wants to learn more about you, what you're doing, certainly your writings and what you have coming up, another book, anything else that you have out in the world, how does one find you?
Well, the most important thing is I'd love people to see what the Commit Foundation does at
Right.
commitfoundation.org and see what transformation looks like. And by the way, we're working to bring it to a broader audience, to more people who
Right.
need it. Um, But look, hit me up on LinkedIn. I usually share stuff there. I print in the Epic Times and Havoc Journal, and um, I can send you a link to my publisher because I don't really sell stuff through Amazon because they take too much. But and people can just reach out. Like, honestly, I enjoy that, and I will get back to people and I will talk to them about anything that they want to have a discussion about. That's the advantage I have, is I have some time to really help people think about this stuff and just share some of the stuff that I've learned, that I'm thinking about.
That is great. Well, I will have that in show notes so that people know that in case they are out on a walk right now and didn't have the commitfoundation.org or a place to write that down in the dirt. Now you have to take a photo of the thing in the dirt. It'll all be there for you, so no problem. I end every podcast with the same question, so we're going to end it on this note, which is funny because of everything we've talked about, but I know you're going to have an answer.
Okay.
I think I'm going to predict what you're going to say, but we'll see if I'm close. What is one thing, JC, that you absolutely believe to be true?
Nothing.
I knew it. I knew it was going to be something around, everything is a possibility. Everything is who knows? The answer is maybe so.
Nothing. I have my truths, and that's, I love my wife. I love my children. I love my stepchildren. I love the people in my life. That's my truth. And sometimes maybe they don't feel that way. So I can't say it's true. So I could sit here and say, well, these are my truths and this is what I believe. But tomorrow, some of those things, somebody could tell me something, and I'll go, so I'm going to say nothing.
All right. Well, hopefully you did not fast forward through this podcast, or that will not make sense. But if you listen to the whole thing in context, you're going to go, I got it. Okay, perfect. Well, on that note, thank you for your time. I loved every minute of it, and I hope that we can continue this conversation and talk again, because very helpful and very enlightening. And I will say this: if you walked away with nothing else from this conversation, and it is your ending note, don't always be so sure. Don't always be so sure, because, that one thing that you may be wrong about could be the thing that unlocks the possibility of your future and who you are and what you can be and what's possible for you. If you're so sure that it can't be, then it won't be. Then you're right. But what if you're wrong? And what if that possibility is out there in the strangest, craziest of ways? So I hope this sparked some interest for our listeners out there. And thank you, JC, for your time and your wisdom. I appreciate you and offering to help people in every way that you can. And I think you're a fabulous teammate. I would love to have you on any team that I'm on. So thank you so much for that. Much appreciated. And everybody who is watching or listening, thank you for tuning in to this episode of the Game Changer Podcast.